Many years ago, in the beautiful village of Baduma, two young women lived side by side like twins that destiny forgot to join. Their names were Kamara and Sonia. If you saw Kamara carrying firewood, Sonia would be behind her adjusting her wrapper as if she was supervising the load. If Kamara was laughing, then Sonia would laugh harder even when she did not understand the joke. People in the village always used them as examples. One woman once said, "See friendship. If your friend is not like Kamara and Sonia, return her to the sender." That day, Kamara heard it and blushed like someone who had just been praised in church, while Sonia smiled like someone collecting an award she did not apply for. Kamara's life was simple. Some people said it was too simple. She lived with her grandmother in a small mud house that leaned slightly to one side as if it was tired of standing. Her parents had died when she was still young, so her grandmother raised her with strict love and plenty of proverbs that Kamara only remembered when it was too late. Not every smiling face has a clean heart, the old woman would tell her. Kamara would nod and reply, "Yes, Mama," only for her to go outside and share her last food with Sonia without counting. Meanwhile, Sonia had mastered the art of looking innocent. In that village, looking innocent could feed you better than farming. From childhood, Kamara had been the one who gave, while Sonia had been the one who received with style. If Kamara brought 2 roasted corn, Sonia would say, Kamara, you know I don't eat 1 corn. My stomach does not accept it." Kamara would laugh and give her the 2. Sonia would collect it boldly and even say, "If there is still more, bring for me." Kamara would nod even when there was nothing left. It became so normal that nobody questioned it anymore. Even Kamara herself did not think deeply about it. In her mind, love was something you gave without keeping record. Unknown to her that some people kept record quietly, like traders counting profit at night. One afternoon, under the big mango tree where young women gathered to talk about marriage, money, and other people's problems, the difference between them tried to show itself. Kamara had brought granuts wrapped in old newspaper. She opened it happily and said, "Let us eat together." Sonia leaned closer and peeped inside. "Is that all?" she asked. Kamara laughed. "Yes, now. I bought it with the small money my grandmother gave me." Sonia clicked her tongue. "You should have told me. I have money." Kamara's eyes brightened. "Really? Then we can buy more." Sonia smiled, shook her head slowly and picked some granules from the paper. "No need. Let us manage this one." The other girls exchanged glances. One of them, Amina, bent closer to another girl and whispered, "See, if stinginess was a person, it would have Sonia's face." The other girl almost choked on her laughter. Kamara heard the laughter but did not understand the meaning. She only smiled and pushed the granules closer to Sonia, who continued taking. That was her gift. She never argued when it came to taking. As they walked home that evening, Kamara carried a small basket of vegetables on her head, while Sonia walked beside her empty-handed, fanning herself like a queen who had retired from labor. Suddenly she said, "Kamara, when you marry, you will suffer." Kamara laughed. "Why?" "You are too soft. Men will eat you like soft yam." Kamara laughed again. "Then I will marry a man that does not eat people." Sonia shook her head. "There is no such man." Kamara turned and looked at her friend with full trust shining in her eyes. "At least I have you to protect me now." Sonia smiled. When they reached Kamara's compound, her grandmother was sitting outside sorting dry pepper. "You are back," she said without looking up. "Yes, Mama," Kamara replied. The old woman glanced at Sonia. then at Kamara, then back at her Pepe. Kamara, come here. Kamara dropped her basket and bent closer. The old woman lowered her voice and whispered, when you share food, do you also share sense? Kamara blinked. Mama! The old woman pointed her chin towards Sonia, who was now inspecting the basket like a customs officer. See, some people eat with you, but they don't feel hunger with you. Kamara frowned slightly. Mama, Sonia is my friend. I did not say she's your enemy, the old woman shot back. I said open your eyes. Kamara nodded, even though her face showed that she had already closed them again. From where she stood, Sonia called out, Kamara, this vegetable is fresh, oh. Your grandmother knows what she's doing. The old woman muttered under her breath, just like I know what I am saying. Later that night, as Kamara lay on her mat, she smiled to herself, thinking about her friend and about how lucky she was to not be alone in the world. In another house, Sonia also lay on her mat, counting something in her head, opportunities and advantage. The next morning, Kamara woke up early and swept the compound, fetched water, greeted her grandmother, and then rushed off to Sonia's house excitedly. Sonia! She called, clapping her hands at the entrance. From inside, Sonia's voice came out lazily. I'm coming. Do you think I am a cock that wakes up before the lights? Kamara laughed. If you were a cock, the whole village would be late. Sonia finally stepped out, tying her wrapper lazily. What is funny? Nothing, no, Kamara replied, still smiling. Come, I brought akara. My grandmother fried it early. Sonia's eyes sharpened immediately. Where is it? Kamara opened the small leaf wrap proudly. Sonia leaned in, picked one, then another. Then another. She chewed slowly like someone inspecting the quality. You people used good oil today, she said. Kamara beamed. Yes, Mama said we should use the oil we were saving. Sonia nodded. Good. Next time, fry more. Kamara blinked. More? Yes now, this one cannot reach my stomach. Kamara laughed, thinking it was a joke, but it was not. That afternoon, at the village square, people gathered because something caught their curiosity. A tall man stood at the center and announced, I am a trader. I come from Kachia beyond the hills. People moved closer. What are you selling? Someone asked. I am not selling, the man replied. I am telling. That alone was enough to hold the crowd. He continued, there is a market far from here, a place where palm oil, vegetables, and even dry fish sell for 3 times the price. The crowd murmured, 3 times? Yes, the trader said. But the journey to that place is not for the weak. You must pass through dry land of no shade or mercy, then forests and hills. A man in the crowd scoffed. If it is that hard, why are you telling us? The trader smiled. Because those who survive the journey do not remain poor. That sentence entered people's ears and settled in their hearts like an assurance. Kamara asked Sonia immediately after, did you hear? Sonia folded her arms. I heard. Kamara quickly said, we should go. Imagine if we sell there, we can build something, maybe even repair our house. My grandmother will not have to struggle again. Sonia looked at her carefully and asked, you want to go? Yes now, Kamara nodded eagerly. Together, like always. Sonia's eyes switched slightly. Together. She repeated the word in her mind. Then she smiled. Yes, together. With that, they started preparation almost immediately. Kamara went home and brought out the wrappers she had been saving for festive days. She held it, looked at it, then sighed and folded it again. Sell it, her grandmother said from behind her. Kamara turned. Mama, you heard me, the old woman said. Sell it. Opportunity does not knock twice. But remember, she paused and looked directly into Kamara's eyes. Don't walk with someone who counts what you cannot see. Kamara hesitated and shrugged. Mama, Sonia will not do anything like that. The old woman did not argue. She simply said, prepare well. Kamara sold the wrappers that same day and used the money to buy goods. Then she shared some of it with Sonia without thinking. Take, we'll combine everything. Sonia accepted. Of course, she would. But that night, inside her room, she did something Kamara did not know. She brought out 2 calabashes and filled both with water. Then she wrapped them in thick clothes and hid them at the bottom of her bag. Then she added extra dry food, more than what she had shown Kamara. She stared at the bag and whispered, for safety, just in case. The following day, the village gathered again at the square, this time for departure. Those who had decided to travel stood with their loads. One elder stepped forward, leaning on his staff, and advised them. If you go, go with one heart. The road ahead does not forgive the vision. What you have, share with another. And what you face, face together. Kamara nodded immediately. Sonia nodded too, but her grip tightened around her back slightly. As they began to leave, Kamara turned back and waved at her grandmother. I will come back with good news, she shouted. The old woman raised her hand slowly and replied, come back with your life. Kamara laughed lightly and turned away, not understanding what those words meant. Sonia did not turn back. She only adjusted her bag, looked ahead and smiled to herself. The group moved together at first and Kamara walked close to Sonia, talking non-stop as usual. When we get there, we will sell everything at a high price. Then we will come back and build a better house, maybe even start a lucrative business. Sonia nodded slowly. Kamara laughed. Don't say like that now. Say something exciting. Sonia glanced at her. I am thinking. Thinking what? Kamara asked. How much we will make, Sonia replied. Kamara smiled widely. You see, we are already rich in our minds. By midday, the paths narrowed and their laughter reduced. The sun began to press harder on their necks. Not hot in a friendly way, but hot like something that wanted to test them. The trees became fewer and the air felt still. Even the birds seemed to have abandoned that part of the land. One of the men in the group wiped his face and said, we are entering the dry stretch. Another woman adjusted her load. Let us rest small, please. They stopped briefly under a weak tree that gave more shadow in imagination than in reality. Kamara sat down and stretched her legs, breathing deeply. This sun is serious, she said, fanning herself. Sonia stood watching. Kamara looked up at her. Sit down now. Your legs are not iron. Sonia shook her head. No. If I sit, I will become tired. Kamara laughed. You are already tired. I am not, Sonia replied. The group started moving again step by step and the distance between them and the village increased. After some time, Kamara called her, Sonia. Yes, Sonia answered. My water is almost finished, Kamara said. Sonia looked ahead and shrugged. Manage it. Kamara nodded. I will. She lifted her calabash and took a single sip, then closed it quickly like someone protecting a treasure. Not long after, one of the travelers ahead shouted, let us increase our pace. If we cross this path before the sun gets worse, we will be safe. Safe! That word encouraged the group and so they walked faster. But unfortunately, not everyone had the same strength. Kamara's step began to slow down and her breathing changed. Sonia, she called out weakly. Yes, Sonia replied without turning. Let us slow down small. Sonia hesitated, then she slowed down, but not out of concern. It was out of calculation. She calculated that if Kamara fell behind too early, it would attract the group's attention. They walked side by side again and Kamara smiled. When we come back, remind me never to follow you on this kind of journey again. Sonia glanced at her. You were the one that wanted to come. Kamara laughed weakly. Yes, but you agreed too fast now. I should have known you were planning to suffer me. Sonia almost smiled. Almost. As the sun climbed higher, the group began to scatter slightly because each person started adjusting to their own strength. Some moved ahead while some fell behind. Just then, Kamara opened her calabash again, but it was empty. She shook it and froze. She stopped walking. Ah! Sonia turned this time. What is it? My water has finished. Sonia stared at her for a moment. Then she said, you should have managed it well. Kamara blinked. I did. I was even drinking it small. Sonia shrugged. This journey is not for children. Kamara laughed, even though her lips were beginning to dry. I am not a child. She looked ahead at the others who were already moving farther away and sighed. She then turned to her friend. Sonia, do you have small water? That question hung between them. It was simple but heavy in meaning. Sonia's hands tightened slightly on her bag. Inside that bag, carefully hidden and wrapped in cloths, was more than enough water, more than enough for both of them. More than enough to save a life. Kamara stood there looking at her with full trust that did not expect disappointment. Sonia, she called again. Sonia's face remained calm. She shook her head. No, I don't have. Kamara slowly nodded. Okay, she did not argue or suspect her dear friend. She simply adjusted her bag and began to walk again slowly. By now, the sun had become something else entirely. It no longer felt like light. It felt like punishment. The ground burned through their slippers and the air itself felt dry, as if it had been squeezed of mercy. Even the wind had stopped moving, as if it did not want to be involved in what was about to happen. Kamara tried to keep up with the others, but her body had begun to betray her. Her steps were no longer coordinated. She now wobbled. She called out again, Sonia! Yes, Sonia replied, still walking on. Let us rest small. Sonia looked ahead. The others were far now, too far to help or watch. If we stop, we may not meet them again, oh, she said. Kamara nodded weakly. Okay, let us walk. So they continued. But now, Kamara's walking was no longer walking. Have you seen a days-old goat trying to walk? Ahem. Her breathing became louder and her eyes were struggling to focus. The road ahead began to look as if the land itself was shaking. She managed a few more steps and her foot dragged. Then again, she stopped. Sonia! This time, Sonia turned immediately. Kamara's eyes looked strange. I feel dizzy, she said. Before Sonia could respond, Kamara's body gave up and she collapsed flat on the ground. For a moment, Sonia stood still. She looked around. The land was empty. The others were gone. She moved closer slowly and bent down. She called, Kamara, but no response came. She tapped her shoulder. Kamara's lips were dry. Her breathing was shallow and her fingers twitched slightly on the ground as if her body was still trying to move without permission. Sonia stood up again. She looked ahead, then behind, then at Kamara, then at her bag. Her hand moved slowly to the strap. She opened the bag small and saw the full calabash of water carefully wrapped, filled with what Kamara needed to regain consciousness. She paused for a second. Then she quickly closed the bag and whispered under her breath, No, if I share now. She did not finish the sentence. Instead, she stepped back, then forward again, then back, as if her body was arguing with itself. Kamara made a weak sound. Sonia froze, then she turned and took a few steps away. She stopped, looked around again, then quickly, like someone stealing from her own conscience, she pulled the bag forward, opened it, brought out the calabash and removed the clothes. Without an ounce of guilt, she lifted it to her mouth and drank greedily. Water touched her throat and spread through her body like the relief she had been saving. She paused, wiped her mouth, then drank again, faster this time, as if time itself was watching her. She suddenly stopped and turned. Kamara was still on the ground. Sonia stared at her. She quickly wrapped the calabash again and pushed it back into the bag, covering it properly. Then she walked back and stood over Kamara. She looked down at her, and for a moment, something soft and human tried to rise inside her. But it did not stay long. It left as quickly as it came. Sonia exhaled. "If I stay, we both may die," she said, as if she was explaining to someone who was not asking. She adjusted her bag, straightened her wrapper, then she turned and began to walk away. Behind her, Kamara's fingers moved slightly in the dust, trying to reach out, but there was nobody to hold. Sonia did not turn back, not for once. She walked fast and did not stop until the dry land began to end and the air started to become warm again. When she finally slowed down, she bent over, placed her hands on her knees and breathed heavily. "I made it," she whispered to herself. The words sounded like escape. She straightened and looked back but saw nothing. She smiled and continued walking. By evening, she reached the next resting point where a few travelers had gathered. Some sat on stones while some lay flat on the floor, all looking tired but alive. When they saw her, one of the women raised her head. "Ah, you are here. Where is your friend?" The question came too quickly. Sonia paused for a second and then smiled. "She's behind. She's walking slowly." The woman nodded. That girl is too soft." Sonia sat down, removed her load and stretched her legs. Nobody asked about Kamara again. However, that night, while others slept in peace, Sonia woke up twice because of thirst. She reached for her water, but even after she drank, her throat still felt dry. She frowned and muttered, "That is strange." She drank again, but nothing changed, so she forced herself to sleep. The next day, the journey continued and Sonia completed it with them. She reached the market beyond the hills, sold everything and made profits, good profits. People praised her strength. One trader said, "You are a strong girl." And Sonia smiled, "I try." Another person asked, "Did you come alone?" Sonia immediately nodded, "Yes." When it was time to return, Sonia did something deliberate. She did not follow the same path she came from. She joined another group taking a different route, even though it was longer. When one of the men asked her, "Why not go back the same way you came? It is shorter." Sonia laughed lightly. "Short road is not always a good road." They nodded innocently. But only Sonia knew the truth that she was not avoiding danger, she was avoiding memory. The journey back was easier. There was more shade, more stops and more water. Yet, something inside her was not relaxed. Every time someone drank water near her, she would look back, and every time someone said the word thirst, her chest would tighten. Still, she ignored it and focused on reaching home. When Sonia finally stepped into Paduma, the village welcomed her with noise and curiosity. "Sonia is back. She went far and beyond. She has returned with money." People gathered around her. She smiled, answered their questions, and showed them the small things she had bought. She laughed when expected and acted like someone who had completed a successful journey. Then the long-awaited question came. One woman asked, "Where is Kamara, your friend?" Sonia's smile paused for 1 second, then it returned. "She decided to stay behind," she said. "Behind where?" another woman asked. Sonia continued smoothly. "She met some people there. They said there was another opportunity, so she decided to try it." The women exchanged glances. The first woman asked again, "Without telling her grandmother?" Sonia shrugged slightly. "You know Kamara now. She can follow opportunity like a goat follows fresh leaves." A few people laughed and the tension reduced. Later that evening, Kamara's grandmother went to Sonia's house. She called, "Sonia!" Sonia stood up immediately. "Mama, "Where is Kamara?" the old woman asked. Sonia looked into her eyes and repeated, "She stayed back. She said she would come later." The old woman stared at her as if she was reading something written behind Sonia's face. She said, Then she turned and left without any arguments. That night, Sonia lay on her mat staring at the ceiling again, just like before the journey. But this time, her mind was not counting profits. It was restless. She turned, closed her eyes, and opened them again. Then she heard a dry voice call, "Sonia." Her body froze. She sat up slowly and looked around, but the room was empty. She held her breath and quickly shook her head. "I'm just tired." She lay back down and closed her eyes again, but the voice came back, "Sonia, water." Her heart began to beat loudly. She jumped up. "Who is there?" No one answered. Sonia swallowed her saliva as her throat suddenly felt very dry. She reached for the water pot beside her bed, opened it and drank a lot. But when she stopped, her throat still burned, as if the water was not reaching where it needed. She lowered the pot slowly and frowned. This is not normal. Even her voice sounded strange in her own ears. It sounded dry, as if it had traveled too far before coming out. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and lay down again, forcing her eyes shut. She told herself, "Sleep, just sleep." But sleep refused to come. Instead, the atmosphere of the room shifted and the voice came again, closer this time. "Sonia." She sat up sharply and demanded loudly, "Who is calling me? Stop this nonsense. If it is somebody, show yourself." The sound came again. "Water." This time, it did not come from the corner or the door. It came from behind her. Sonia froze. Slowly, she turned. She saw nobody, but the room no longer felt empty. It felt shared. By morning, Sonia's eyes were red and her lips were dry. She moved like somebody who had not rested. Yet, she forced herself to go outside, pretending everything was fine. People greeted her and she answered, but her voice had lost its strength. Amina looked closely at her face and asked, "Sonia, are you okay?" Sonia quickly replied, "I am fine." Amina raised an eyebrow. "You look like someone that fought in the night." Sonia laughed too much. It must be the long journey. But even as she laughed, her dry tongue stuck slightly to the roof of her mouth. By afternoon, it became worse. No matter how much water she drank, her throat remained dry. Her stomach began to feel heavy. Her chest felt tight and her head felt really light. She walked to the stream, knelt down, scooped water and drank again and again and again, but her thirst remained unquenchable. People began to notice. One woman joked, Sonia, leave some water for us." But Sonia did not laugh. She slowly stood up and walked away. By evening, speculation started. Sonia is behaving strangely. Maybe something followed her from there. Maybe she saw something on the road. Kamara's grandmother heard them, but she said nothing. She only sat outside her house, staring at the road that led out of the village, waiting patiently. That night, Sonia could not hold it in anymore. She lay down, but her body refused to relax. Her throat burned like fire and her chest felt like something was pressing her from inside. Then the voice returned, clearer and stronger now. "Why did you drink alone?" Sonia jumped up and shouted, "No, I did not." Then she stopped because even she knew she was lying. At that moment, the room became cold and she saw a shape at the corner of the room. Sonia's body began to shake. She whispered, "Kamara!" But the shape did not move or attack. It only stood waiting. The voice came again, the same way it had sounded on the ground that day. "Water." Sonia covered her ears and cried, "I did not mean to. If I had stayed, we both would have died." But the voice continued to say, "Water, water," as if it was reminding her. Sonia fell to her knees and shouted, I was afraid, I was afraid. I had water. Yes, I had it. But I thought of myself. The next morning, Sonia ran off to the shrine. She entered without greeting and cried, I left her. The priest looked at her confused. Who? Sonia shouted, Kamara, I left her in the dry land. She was thirsty. I had water. I drank it. I left her to die. Silence filled the shrine. The priest stood and asked, You drank alone? Sonia cried harder, Yes. You watched her thirst? He continued. Sonia nodded, Yes. You walked away. Sonia's body shook. Yes. The priest looked at her deeply and asked, Then why are you surprised that thirst is following you? Sonia froze. It all sank in now. That same morning, the elder sent out some people to search for Kamara. They followed the path, found the place, and there, under the open sky, they found Kamara's body lying still and peaceful. But her hand was stretched forward as if she was still asking. When they brought the news back, the village fell into shock. Kamara's grandmother did not cry loudly. She only closed her eyes, opened them again and said, I told her. As for Sonia, she could not drink water ever again. Each time she tried, she would cough, choke, and gasp, as if another throat inside her was rejecting it. People began to say, she's not alone inside her body. One evening, she was seen at the river scooping water and pouring it on the ground again and again, crying and saying, Drink first, Kamara, drink first. But the ground did not respond. The water disappeared into the earth silently. Dear besties, thank you for watching the story. The story is dedicated to Sonia and Kamara, our birthday besties. Dear Sonia and Kamara, I wish you a very happy birthday, and I pray that your path will never cross with wolves dressed in friends' clothing. God shall direct your path and lead you right in life. Besties, let's wish them well in the comment section. If you enjoyed this story, kindly share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!